The real thing has started now, and now it's me, Chris Liss, and Jeff Erickson coming at you on RotoWire TV and Fantasy Football Central on Google+. Welcome, guys.
Hey,
What's going on, Michael?
So, how'd your teams do this weekend so far?
You know,
I think
so
Liss and I
many
are
of
going to
them.
split. Go ahead, Chris.
We're playing each other in two leagues.
Yeah, the Vegas League and Yahoo Friends and Family. And I think you and I are going to split. You're going to win Vegas League, and I'm going to win Friends and Family. I think I've already won Friends and Family, and basically, LeSean McCoy doesn't have to break an ankle in the first 12 seconds of the game, and you'll pass me back up.
Yeah. That's about right. I think I don't know what my record is even, and some leagues are really important, some don't matter at all, and obviously some are still in the balance with Monday night. But I did okay. I was reasonably happy fantasy wise. I felt like enough of the players that I got either did well enough to win, or maybe the team I was playing scored a ridiculous amount of points. But I feel like I have a good team going forward. The more troubling thing was Survivor and my record against the spread were both very bad. But fantasy-wise, it was fine. It was a fine first week.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What's your most important league? What league do you care about the most?
I would say that the NFFC leagues and SOPA Law Firm League are my three biggest, because they're the biggest money. I care about the Stake League just because I don't want to be an eater, and I just like to keep that streak up. I've only had to buy. I want to be an eater, not a buyer. I've only had to buy once ever, so that matters. And then the Friends and Family is kind of a big public league that is good to win. But those are kind of the five biggest, I would say.
Do you have a home league that you care about?
No, I quit my home league because I didn't like the way it was. It was just so annoying. I'm sure it's different now, but at the time I quit it, they were still doing free agents by hand. So there was no list. You had to look at who people had dropped over the last 5. This is in 2003. They were still doing it this way, and I was like, guys, I'm so busy with so many leagues, I can't do it. I'm sorry. So I quit that league, and it was a cool league in its own way. It had some weird scoring rules, but anyway, there's that, and there's a whole bunch of free leagues I have that I don't really care about.
Yeah. For me, Stopa League, the NFFC, my home league, that one that started RotoWire. It's a great league, and the Stake League are my top 4. There's another. I have 2 home leagues actually now, and they're different. There's no crossovers either, so it's kind of good. I think those, anything where there's something at stake, that's where it's important. And to that end, I'm kicking butt in Stopa this week, so that's always good. I unfortunately NFFC is kind of a dog of a team. I think I messed up the running backs. Although taking Marshawn Lynch wouldn't have cured that. I passed up on Marshawn Lynch at 112, and maybe he'll be fine later on, but he certainly wouldn't have made any difference this week. But
Definitely not.
Well, I don't think you can sit there and place verdicts on your team after week 1, though. I think you get a vibe for I'm not happy about this. Look, if your running backs are David Wilson and Stephen Ridley or something like that, Ridley may get another shot now that Vereen's out. But let's say your running backs are David Wilson and Shane Vereen in the PPR, and and your quarterback. There's no quarterback that really lowered his stock that badly this week. I'm a little worried if I had Romo. I do have him in a couple places just with the Des Bryant. Des Bryant. X-rays on his ankle were negative. Oh yeah, well how about the?
They're
ligament?
always negative. That means nothing.
Well, it means he didn't break his ankle, but he still could have has a sprain, which means he has a torn ligament, and it's just the degree of the sprain that's going to matter. He could be out a few weeks.
Yeah, I actually prefer breaks in bones than I do the sprains, because you kind of know what the timetable is going to look like. With sprains, there's so much gray area, or in this case, purple area, that you just don't know what's going to happen. I think you were saying on the radio earlier today that you've played with a sprained ankle, and it's fine when it's warm, but when it gets cold, it can just stink for a long period of time.
Yeah, guys have played. Olandis Gary, the running back for the Broncos, in 2000, I want to say, around then, 1999. He tore his ACL during the game, played the entire game, and then after the game was ruled out for the season with a torn ACL.
Yeah.
So, you can do a lot while it's still warm, and you're right. When it cools down, Des Bryant, it could be a high ankle sprain, and he could be out 4 to 6 weeks. We don't know this. I'm not trying to say this is breaking news. It's not yet. But it does say he had a sprained ankle. Roddy White had a sprained ankle a month ago, and now he's totally useless in week 1. That's, I'm worried about Des Bryant. And Tony Romo's ribs, bruised ribs. Isn't that what Jacoby Ellsbury had that year that he was out for the entire season? Bruised ribs are no joke.
It's hard to breathe. When you can't breathe, you can't play. So it's that simple.
Right.
So
I'm a little worried about Roddy White too, by the way.
we're gonna get to him. We're gonna get to him because I took him. I took him as my number one receiver in the expert league of Fantasy Football Central, and I passed on Larry Johnson. That's gonna burn me. I can already sense it now. But so basically, I want to whip through week one so far, maybe preview the games tonight, and then say good luck to everyone on their way this week. So and maybe preview the Thursday game as well because that's coming up as well. But first things.
Mike, stop you real quick. You can't say good luck to everyone because it's a zero-sum game. It's a zero-sum game.
That's
Everyone
true.
can't have good luck.
It's kind of disingenuous. You really don't care that much. Right. I mean, yeah, you want customers to do well.
I only hope our customers do well. Like if it's like a rival's customers, I hope they do horribly. I hope they have the worst seasons of their lives. I hope everything goes wrong. I'll tell you what else. People say, "Oh, some scrub scores a touchdown." Some fullback gets the handoff. They say, "This helps no one." No, it helps me if I'm playing against the guy. When Jackie Battle scored a touchdown, if I'm going against Chris Johnson in the league, that helps me. Don't act like it helps no one. This is a zero-sum game. Yeah. I can't stand the fantasy pundits that every week it's like win-win. Hey, great, Adrian Peterson scored. We're so excited. No, that sucks. I don't own Adrian Peterson anywhere. Obviously that's bad. It's not. We're not big cheerleaders for everybody. It's a competition. Okay, so sorry. I know you weren't saying that, but I just got to get that in the way.
Chris, I hope everyone does 1 point worse than me. That's all I mean. Right. I hope everyone performs really well because I expect to perform well. Just 1 point less than me, we'll be okay. We'll move on.
Right. But, unless you have a side bet against someone where margin of victory is incremental cost, then you want to crush them. But
of course. But
I hope everyone gets pocket kings when I get pocket aces.
Exactly, Chris. Exactly. So speaking of kings, we're going to start with Thursday and the king of the quarterbacks, Peyton Manning, 7 touchdowns. Not exactly what we expected, but still real. I mean, you can't expect this every week. But anything that took you by surprise there, as far as in that matchup, besides for Manning 7?
You're right.
First of all, that was very native of you, by the way. Speaking of king.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I had Peyton Manning for 8 touchdowns, and so I was a little off. Only had 7. But, I have to say, it's not just – and he went in the first round in the FFC League on Friday. He went 8th. And what sucked is since I picked 7th, I ended up playing Team 8 because Team 7 plays Team 8, and I lost. But I do think it's not just the banked touchdowns that you get that made him worth that much. I think it's also that I think we're looking at a team that's going to produce more in the passing game. The running game did not look good. And I think Wes Welker is kind of like, it's like a running back. They're like handing the ball off to him 5 yards down the field. And so a lot more, what would be rushing yards are now passing yards. And with the emergence of Julius Thomas, along with obviously Demaryius Thomas and Decker, and then Welker, I think Peyton Manning may have if he stays healthy, a season where he throws 48 touchdowns and 5,000 yards, where he, threatens the records in those two categories. I think it's very possible. Also, the absence of Von Miller, the absence of Champ Bailey early on, the defense doesn't look that great. I think it's not just what he did. It's that he may keep doing. He's not going to throw 7 touchdowns again, but he may throw 4 and 5 a few times.
And then you brought him up, so I'm going to bring him up again. But with Julius Thomas there, at the tight end, if he's on your waiver wire, I mean, how much are you bidding? Obviously you're going to pick him up, but how much of your budget are you willing to spend on him? I mean, how much do you? Let's say over under 8 touchdowns this year.
I'm going to say over. He's got 2 already. But Jeff, how much of your 100? Out of 100%, what percent of your budget are you willing to bid on Thomas?
Well, as always, it's conditional. If I have Tony Gonzalez already or something like that.
Let's say you have Zach Miller or Martellus Bennett.
Right, and I do have
Not that those are necessarily the same.
Yeah.
Bennett actually scored too, but that raises a greater point. But yeah, I'd say if I really need a tight end and he's going to be my starter week in, week out, 15 to 20% of my budget, I think. I think. Do you really believe that? We talked about this on the air that it's a numbers game. Is his number going to come up every week? I don't think so. I think he gets 6 or 7 more touchdowns the rest of the way, which puts him above Zach Miller, but it puts him at the same class as, like, I'm trying to think of it. Brandon Myers.
Brandon Myers, that's the guy. That's the guy who I had. Would you? I mean, if you were starting Brandon Myers, would you be active trying to pick up Julius Thomas, or?
I'd put a keep him honest bid in there, like 10%.
And,
That's a good point. I mean, I think Thomas has more upside than any of those guys. I mean, I think Thomas could get 12 touchdowns on the year. Demaryius Thomas could get hurt. Decker could get hurt. I mean, there's going to be injuries. But you're right. I mean, Manning threw 7 touchdowns. If he throws 4, there's not 2 for everybody when he throws 4.
Yeah. And just a point on Demaryius Thomas. I mean, yes, he finished the day with 160 something receiving yards and double touchdowns. That one last garbage touchdown for that long touchdown. How many of those is he going to get?
Several.
Several. He's that good.
Yeah.
Actually, and the thing is, he was getting targets early in the game. It wasn't like this was like hey, he's cleaning up the garbage for us. No, he was targeted all throughout the game. It just they weren't connecting early on. It's funny because I think someone even tweeted that how much they were panicking over Demaryius Thomas not doing anything.
Yeah.
Like, well, he's got his role already. So it's actually wasn't it you?
Oh, I was placating to all of because I was following Twitter all night on Thursday and all day on Sunday, and I love the overreaction. So I'll play to it. So I'll be like, hey, who's worried about Demaryius Thomas? Or hey, who's worried about Ray Rice? That was my favorite. And then people were like, oh yeah, I'm picking up Pierce. I love Bernard Pierce now. It's just,
right after 2 plays, right? They were like,
exactly.
Too soon. Like, dude. It's been like 2 plays.
Yes, 2 plays out of a 4-month season. So a quick lesson to everyone out there. Just hold off. All right. Be patient. Be a little patient in this game, and it'll pay off for you. But speaking of patience, I mean, I'm going to move on to the Buccaneers and Jets because I want to get through this game as quickly as possible. This took a lot of patience to watch. I was being a New York area person with television, I had to suffer through this game. It was ugly. Being a proud Doug Martin supporter and owner, I don't know what to take from this game other than the fact that I was really disappointed. Mike Williams had a touchdown, which was nice. If Doug Martin didn't get that touchdown, it just would have been a complete waste of time. And just your overall impressions on Tampa Bay's offense and those highly touted weapons going into the season.
They're fine. I mean, the Jets in New York, that's a tough defense to play against. And the idea that the Jets are going to get crushed and all these people, that was ridiculous. The Jets, their offense is still a work in progress, though Geno Smith has upside. They had some receivers, who are interesting, although Curley got hurt and I don't know what else. Kellen Winslow actually had a role. But I just think that was a tough game. I mean, they scored 17 points. That's about the over-under what I would have had them for. I had them winning like 16-13. So they lost 18-17. I mean, that's exactly what I've expected them to score. They're going to get the Saints twice. They're going to get the Falcons twice. They'll score more points in those games.
Yeah, and they're going to get the Patriots once. I think they're going to move the ball against the Patriots too. The Bills will move the ball against also. So maybe the Dolphins they won't. I don't know about that one, but I think there's better times ahead. I'm not that concerned about Martin. Certainly, Victor. Both Vincent Jackson and Mike Williams got theirs. I'd be fine with it. Yeah, I'm with Chris on this one.
And then for the Jets, no clarity to the running back situation. Would you own, if you had the choice, if you had to choose one, Bilal Powell or Chris Ivory?
Ivory.
I guess Ivory, but I mean, neither of them did anything. But we knew that was going to be the case anyhow. They sold out to stop the run last year. They were the number one run
defense last year. Yeah, it's harder to run on Tampa than it was San Francisco last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing, and you see something coming, you see it happening in advance, and it happens. Why change your opinion?
Yeah, exactly. A game that didn't turn out that way exactly as you thought it would. Patriots-Bills. Patriots barely squeaked out of 23-21. Tom Brady looked rather pedestrian, 29-52, 288, couple touchdowns. Amendola, 10 receptions for 100 yards, looking a lot like Wes Welker doing so, may I add. And then the running back situation, which is what's on everybody's mind. Shane Vereen looked pretty good, actually really good. 14 carries, 101 yards, was a factor in the receiving game as well. Then, of course, breaks some bones in his wrist, and now he's out for a while, which means Stephen Ridley, the fumbler, is back into the starting role, at least for now. What do you guys do about that running back situation in New England?
I think it's funny he's labeled the fumbler. He had 4 fumbles last year. He lost 2. He lost 1 fumble this year. And he was in purgatory the rest of the game. He didn't get back in the offensive lineup at all. But he was effective before that fumble. He has like 7 carries for 45 yards, something like that. It was a pretty high yards per carry, maybe 9 for 49. Now that I know about it, now
Yeah.
I think about it, but regardless, it was a good yards per carry, and there weren't too many running backs that had a good yards per carry yesterday. So he's effective when he holds onto the ball. I mean, I know it's a huge, caveat, but at the same time, I mean, it's true. I mean, they got the short turnaround against the Jets this week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to have enough time to train up Brandon Bolden into that full-time role. Ridley's going to get back in there.
So are you a buyer, a seller, or a holder? So if you didn't own, would you try to buy him or would you try to sell him if you had him?
Ridley?
Yeah.
I'll buy him. Sure. Why not? If he comes at sticker or lower, why not?
Chris?
Yeah, I would buy him for price of a 3rd-round pick, but I don't know if I'm going to get him for that now that Vereen is hurt. I think the time to buy was before we heard about Vereen's injury. The time to buy was last night. Now the stock is back up. You're probably not going to get much of a deal. I think the more interesting point about New England is not the running backs. It's the receivers, and they could not stretch the defense yesterday. Sudfeld was a 0, and now he's hurt. Kenbrell Tompkins did not look good. Amendola was good, but he was catching 10 for 100. I mean, that's 10 yards a catch. That's not going anywhere. Looking like Welker in that respect. Also pigmentation-wise, very similar.
Deceptive speed. Speed.
The Patriots have that very important white receiver slot they have to fill, so of course they did. And then they got a second one in Edelman, who same thing. I mean, he's a small chunks. You get 7, 8 yard catches. That's PPR. Amendola will be very good in PPR. Edelman might be useful, assuming he keeps getting targeted. But Kenbrell Tompkins is slow also. I mean, Amendola has a little speed, but he's too small to be a real deep threat. They need to get Aaron Dobson back, Josh Boyce, somebody to stretch the field. You can't play like that. That's why they almost lost the game. So I think they'll adapt, they'll figure it out. But I think that's the takeaway, is that right now the Patriots are a very toothless offense.
Yeah. And then in Buffalo, this one really is going to be about the running options. E.J. Manuel a little bit when he runs, but then Fred Jackson, 13 carries, 67 yards, and 4 receptions, 41 yards, leading the team, both categories. That's kind of cutting into C.J. Spiller territory there. Any thoughts on the running back situation in Buffalo?
Well, once again, it was a fumble thing, too. This was the fumble bowl between Spiller and Ridley, but and Spiller just didn't run that well when he did get his opportunities. I think he'll be fine, but yeah, it's disconcerting if you spent that 1st-round pick on Spiller. You're wondering if maybe the family situation's weighing on him or not. We have no way of knowing how much of a factor that is, but it's probably a factor.
I'm sick of this, these babying these guys. Like, so someone in your family did a murder-suicide. Get over it, I mean, geez, move on. Move on already.
How hard could it be, right, Chris?
Yeah, hey, so someone went off the edge, I mean, hey, just roll with it. No, who knows? If that is an issue, and I don't know that it is, obviously, that's not going away. You need a decade to get over something like that, So right. I don't know. I didn't, honestly, like before the season, nobody wanted to talk about it. I was like, oh, I don't want to, we don't want to talk about that. That's too dark or whatever. It's like nobody wanted the Ryan Braun. His name came up in the biogenesis. Don't worry about that. Just forget about that. Let's just draft Braun 3rd overall. Oh well, this guy's grandfather or step-grandfather to whom he was close just did a murder-suicide. That is not a joke. That is serious stuff. And everyone's like, oh yeah, well that's just some family stuff. I mean, who knows? I'm not saying that's the reason, but if his focus is not there, if mentally he's a little shell-shocked, I mean, it would hardly surprise anybody. I think maybe he should have been a little discounted because of that.
Yeah. Well, so we'll cut straight to it. C.J. Spiller, buy, sell, or hold?
You got to hold. I mean, you pay 1st-round value for him. What are you going to sell him for? And and I would buy him if he were cheap. I don't think anyone who drafted Spiller is going to sell him cheap.
Right.
Same thing. Hold.
Yeah.
Fred Jackson. Would you guys buy Fred Jackson?
Nah. I mean, who cares? I mean, the second guy in the rotate. I don't know. I don't see any reason to.
I'm kind of with Chris on this.
Yeah. All right then. We'll move right on to the Bengals and the Bears. Jeff's Bengals. Yeah. Very, very exciting as always.
Just sell them all.
But plenty of room on the bandwagon still. Don't worry. I mean, it's fine. Actually, they didn't play that poorly. They just got stupid in certain critical circumstances, and that. But that's something that's always held this team back is the coaching staff. Whether it's win to challenge, Marvin's never kind of demonstrated much of an aptitude on that, or lining up the right number of people. One play 12, the next play 10. That's 2 timeouts in the second half.
It averages
11.
Yeah, exactly. It averages.
Yeah.
But Andy Dalton, I'm sure, though, those 2 picks in the first half didn't help. But he actually finished the day.
Neither of those were his fault, though.
Well,
the first one is debatable. Green could have fought better to stay in front of Tillman, but you could say that might have been Dalton's fault for throwing in the first place. That might have been. The second one was.
I think more the decision not to throw. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the first one's the decision not to throw.
Right. When you turn your receiver into a defender, when the receiver's being criticized for not being a better defender, it's a bad decision.
Yes. But it was also quick hitting play, and last time we saw the Bengals in a game that mattered, they're saying, hey, they didn't force it to Green enough. Well, they tried to force it to Green more.
Yeah. So the running back situation in Cincinnati was going to be a committee, or looked like a committee going in, and it looks like it's Green Ellis with 14 carries, 25 yards, monster day yards per carry, and a touchdown. So
again, yet another team with the poor yards per carry. I mean, go look at our down the board. I mean, it's definitely up and down the board. There's low yards per carry all over the place.
Well. Yep. What week? I'd like to know when the last week is that only one running back broke 100 yards and no running back broke 110 yards in the entire week. I bet that's not happened in 20 years. 2, the only other 100-yard rusher was Terrell Pryor, quarterback. I'm going to look that up. I don't think we've ever had a week where no running back. What did Vreen get, like 101 or something like that? No running back in the league has gotten 105 yards in the week. I cannot remember a week that's happened.
Yeah,
we got 4 more left tonight too.
Right,
so
that's true.
Yeah.
Especially because Adrian Peterson got it all started with 78 yards on the first play.
Right.
And then 15 on his next 17 carries.
Yeah.
First play of the day is a 75-yard touchdown, and at the end of the day, there's one running back with 101 yards, and that guy's not even playing next week.
Exactly. Just a bad yards per carry week. That is certainly true. Maybe that changes next week, but I mean, the transition to a passing offense. If you haven't seen the evidence yet, that's a really good piece of evidence now. But on the Chicago side of this game, Cutler 21 of 33, no sacks, 2 touchdowns, 242 yards, middle of the road. But Matt Forte 19 carries, 50 yards and a touchdown. Brandon Marshall 8 receptions, 104 and a touchdown. Kind of what you expected, maybe a little light on the Forte yardage front, but he actually got into the end zone, which is nice. Anything surprising from the Chicago side?
Nothing surprising. It's just they said that they're going to use more secondary targets, and they did. Martellus Bennett and Alshon Jeffrey were both active in this passing offense. So, I mean, I'll say there was one thing that surprised me. The Bengals pass rush couldn't get to Cutler at all. The Bengals have a pretty good pass rush, and the Bears' offensive line held up quite well. He rarely was hurried.
Well,
rarely
they drafted and signed new linemen this offseason. I mean, their line should be better. Yeah,
it should be, but usually those young guys sometimes they take a while. Ask Pittsburgh about that.
Yeah.
Ask Arizona when they lose their guy, but
they also Chicago wasn't bombing the ball downfield. It's not like he was holding on to the ball. It was very short passing, medium passing. Make sure you get the ball out on time so you don't take those sacks. But Cincinnati, if not the best defensive line, at least the front 4, one of the top. There's none better. There might be some equal, but none better. So a very good sign in that regard that Chicago's able to keep them clean. Just a real quick buy, sell, hold. Cincinnati, Gio Bernard, buy, sell, or hold?
Buy. He's not his cheapest value.
Hold. I don't see any real movement there.
All right, and then Chicago, Martellus Bennett. Are you buying his role in this offense, or selling or holding?
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
I agree with that.
Yep. All right, so we'll move on to the Dolphins and Browns. So the Dolphins paid big money for Mike Wallace for a grand total of 3 fantasy points. So fantastic job there. Ryan Tannehill, 24-38, 272 and a touchdown, which went to the another guy with deceptive speed, Brian Hartline, 9 receptions, 114 yards, and a touchdown. And then the running back situation in Miami was not very good this week. Leading rusher was everyone's favorite, Daniel Thomas, 8 carries, 14 yards, and a touchdown.
Well, let me talk about the Wallace thing real quick.
Yeah.
I want to see how many snaps Joe Hayden was on him, because that's a real shutdown corner, and I think I might have underestimated that effect when trying to predict this game a little bit here. He's not always going to have that sort of coverage. I mean, it's obvious they just stopped looking, man. They went to Clay, they went to Hartline, and Tannehill isn't that good anyhow. I mean, he did not have that great of a day, but at least it was better than all he had to do was be better than Brandon Whedon, and he accomplished that.
Yeah. Anything? Well, what about Lamar Miller? You guys have anything?
It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. He's got to decisively put away Daniel Thomas. He couldn't do it in the preseason. He didn't do it in week 1. Maybe he emerges. Maybe he ends up being good, but I just not there. He's never done it before. It's all on spec. It's all on he's speedy. He's got he can catch the ball. It's all on spec. We haven't seen anything good from him, and so I would downgrade him.
And then on the Cleveland side, just real fast, Trent Richardson, are you worried?
No.
No, he's fine. The only to the extent I'm worried, it's that can Brandon Whedon get the job done and ease some of the pressure off the running game. Getting Josh Gordon back in week 3 will be a big telltale sign there because he was able to work with Cameron, but Whedon was bad. I mean, he forced a lot of throws.
Well, also Greg Little and Devon Bess are they're totally incapable of making a big play.
Right.
So you've got the tight end who can do something, but he's still a tight end. He doesn't have like 4.4 speed or anything. So there's just nothing. I mean, it's just hard to move the ball down the field when you have no field stretcher. Got to get Josh Gordon back.
Yep, absolutely. And will that affect Jordan Cameron's value at all, or will you think will it enhance it going down the road?
It'll be the same. He can't get better. I mean, he got a touchdown and plenty of yards. I think he'll be fine. He'll be useful.
I don't think it's like one of those situations where he's the only game in town and now he'll get hurt by that. No, I think if anything he'll get helped because maybe get worse coverage, or not be the priority.
Gotcha. And now we'll move on to one of the better games, fantasy-wise and also entertainment-wise. Green Bay, San Francisco, fantastic game to watch. I was just captured from the word go. Colin Kaepernick, 27-39, 412 yards, barely rushed the ball at all, 3 touchdowns.
He had 25 yards rushing, right?
Yeah, but there were no designed runs.
Right.
That's something that I was looking for, especially in the expert league where rushing touchdowns are 6 points and everywhere else is 4 points for passing touchdowns. You were really looking for Kaepernick in that kind of value.
Mike, are you complaining about Kaepernick's performance for your expert league team?
No, absolutely not. However,
greed can get excessive. It's good to be somewhat greedy, but don't get crazy.
No, but is it fair to expect 400 yards passing and 3 touchdowns from him every week? I don't think so. I mean, part of his value is
going out of that brave stand there, Mike. I don't know. Going on a limb.
Well, you don't think he's going to pass for 6,400 yards in the season? Break Brees' record by 1,000.
Well, I think if you cut
it's
both
what was available.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree, but they didn't even. It looked like.
I think it's a good point. They weren't designing those read option pistol looks. They weren't.
Yeah.
But I think he'll get him. I think the guy is a really good pocket passer. Bolden is solid. He doesn't need to be open, and Kaepernick seems to know that. Just throws to him, and Bolden go up and make the play. I love that Vernon Davis was involved. Mm-hmm. I think Vernon Davis is the big takeaway from this game. He's going to be a monster this year without Crabtree there. Between him and Anquan Bolden, that's going to be good. Vernon Davis can stretch the field because of his speed and size, and I think Bolden can stretch the field even a little bit, even though he's slow because of his size. And I think it's going to be a big year for Kaepernick, and I do think there'll be some scrambling rushing yards, but maybe he turns more into Aaron Rodgers than Cam Newton. He could have gone either way, but maybe he gets the 400, 350, 400 rushing yards and 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns instead of 8 and 800. Yeah. But he throws for 4,400 yards and 35 passing touchdowns, and you don't care.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's more that Dom Capers was doing a lot of zone blitzing, and since they were playing zone behind it, he wasn't going to run because he'd be running right into defenders, and he was just going to pick them apart with his passing skill, which he did, which was great. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like if they're going to be man up or cover 2, and they're going to have to run down the field with those receivers, yeah, you may see it more often. He'll start to really use his legs more, but
think Aaron Rodgers and Steve Young. That's what we're looking at here. It's going to be a monster season.
Yeah, and then we'll turn it over on to the Packers, and then Aaron Rodgers, 21-37, 333, 3 touchdowns, fantastic as always. Anything you take away from the Green Bay side that kind of surprised you? Maybe Eddie Lacy's role, or was he good, or would you want to see more in the future?
Well, he got 14 carries. That's not so bad for a Packers running back. He didn't do much with it, 2.9 yards per carry. But then again, it was against San Francisco. I'm not going to be too upset about that. Got his rushing touchdown. If you're a Lacy owner, you're perfectly content with what he provided for you, I'm pretty sure. Jermichael Finley recovered from that early drop. Given that he dropped a couple in the preseason finale too, and we saw what happened to him last year. I know he got the touchdown this week, and that was fine. But the drops are still a concern for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Finley, who knows? Health and hands are a problem, but there is upside. Jordy Nelson's the big takeaway there. Looked healthy, played great, made some good plays. Cobb looked good as always, but Jordy Nelson was kind of the question mark in my mind. Now that I know that he's healthy, he's a top 10 receiver, as long as he can stay that way. James Jones got a 0. I think he's clearly the number 3 receiver, and if Finley has his act together, then James Jones may be the number 4 receiver, and that hurts him a lot. So, James Jones's fate depends on Nelson and Finley. Can they stay healthy? In which case James Jones he'll get his 700-800 yards and his 6, 7, maybe 8 touchdowns, but he's not going to be a big like he was last year.
And this is nothing new for James Jones either. I mean, he had a couple of feast or famine. He had a couple of famine games last year too, interspersed with the touchdown mania.
I agree. Yeah, his main value last year is that he caught a bunch of touchdowns, and he did the most with his opportunity. But this year, I don't see much opportunity with James Jones, as far at least not an increase in opportunity from last year. And if anything, it's going to decrease sharply. Especially if Eddie Lacy decides that they're going to pass Eddie Lacy as well. So
Lacy passed the eye test. I like Eddie Lacy. I thought he looked good.
I agree.
Yeah, and we have to keep in mind that Green Bay will not play a defense this good, or at least better than this for much of the year, if not at all. So this was the numbers they put up were against one of the better tests they were going to have on defense as well.
True.
Yep. And then a surprisingly defensive game, actually, for me, was the Saints and Falcons game, where it ended 23-17, hitting the under for the first time in that series in a long time. That cost me on my over/under / against the spread bets this week. But the Saints, Drew Brees, 26 of 35, 357, 2 touchdowns, exactly where you'd want him to be. Running back wise, everyone was excited about Mark Ingram heading into this year. It looked like he had the clear path towards first down, second down. Then Sproles just the change, passing back out of the backfield, maybe some pass blocking. Not the case. Leading rusher Pierre Thomas, 9 carries, 43 yards, and then Sproles, leading receiver, kind of surprising but not really, 6 receptions, 88 yards. Anything surprising on the New Orleans front for you guys? Kenny Stills with those two receptions for 86 yards.
Well, Ingram was just as bad as usual, 9 for 11. That was kind of surprising that it'd be that bad.
These teams know each. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Jeff.
No, it's fine. Go ahead, Chris.
These teams know each other very well. Atlanta defends New Orleans better than most teams, even though Atlanta's defense is not that good against other teams, and vice versa. They know how to play each other. I'm really pissed because I had Atlanta against the spread, and I mean, Matt Ryan was on the doorstep, to win the game, and just fell a little short. So, that I wouldn't say that these teams are not going to operate at full capacity as soon as they get unleashed against other teams that don't know how they play as much.
Yeah, and losing Roddy White at full capacity is a big deal for Atlanta too. I mean, I know Harry Douglas had that one big play, but this is something that might last the next couple of weeks. They all along, it's a low ankle sprain. We hope, the warning sign was when Dimitrov, a week before the season started, goes, we hope he's ready for week 1, instead of saying, we're sure. That should have been our warning. We did. I mean, we tried to heed it, but then on Sunday morning we saw the conflicting reports. 80-20 against playing. He's in the starting lineup. Yeah. And then he only got 2 targets all day. I mean, and then the most telling thing was White himself saying after the fact on Twitter today, hey, if I'm not practicing, that's your sign not to start me. Oh, great. Now you say it.
Yeah. But, yeah, and I mean, he has the consecutive game streak, and I think that played a larger factor than people realize, that he doesn't want to stop his consecutive games played streak with this ankle sprain. I mean, I have a bad feeling that this may linger until after their bye week in week 6 till week 7. I just have a funny feeling he's not going to get right until he gets those 2 real weeks off in a row without having to play at all. And that's what I feel is the worst case scenario, but that's bad. That is very, very bad, and I'm very down on Roddy White. Unfortunately, I've drafted him in a bunch of leagues, so I feel pretty bad about that. But your guys' feeling on Steven Jackson's role in the offense, exactly where you think it's going to be the rest of the year, or catching more balls or running for more yards, or?
Well, he looked pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, he was efficient. I think he'll get, he'll be around that. He'll
he got targets too.
Yeah.
5 catches for 45 yards. I like that too. I mean, he's no Reggie Bush, but he's, not too many other running backs were getting that many targets. I mean, Murray, Sproles, Marine, that's about it in terms of the number of targets out there. So I like seeing that too.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have used him a little bit more.
Yeah, none of those guys, by the way, you can't pencil the other guys in for 9, 10 rushing touchdowns. With that, you can for Steven Jackson. I mean, you can almost count on it that he's going to get I'm going to say conservatively 8 and optimistically 12, rushing touchdowns in that offense. Because when they get close, they love to run.
Sure.
Yeah. And speaking of running, though, but badly, the Giants and the Cowboys kind of summed it up last night. And I'm sorry.
Let me say one thing about this game. If you're a Cowboys fan, you should be very, very worried about your team.
Yeah,
the Giants kick the crap out of them. If you looked at the yards per player, any sort of efficiency metric whatsoever, and you didn't know the turnover stat, which is totally random, you'd think the Giants won like 55-10. Okay, the Cowboys have to win that game at least 55-10. Okay, Eli threw for 460 yards on 11 yards per attempt, okay? I mean, the receivers, they had 3 guys catching 300-yard receivers, plus the tight end had 70 yards. I mean, 66 yards. I mean, it's crazy. And, they just got a lot of bad luck. Dallas did not look good. They could not move the ball and kill the clock when they needed to. The Giants lost Prince Amukamara, their best cover corner. Didn't seem to make a difference. They still had trouble passing on them. They already didn't have Stevie Brown. Obviously, David Wilson's the big story fantasy-wise. Took a big hit with those 2 fumbles. Darrell Scott, made that little bit of a gaffe, although maybe it was Eli's fault. But either way, it was that pick 6 that sealed the game. The Giants are working out Brandon Jacobs right now, and Joe McKnight of the Jets, McGahee, other dinosaurs from that are way too old to make a difference. McKnight at least is younger and quicker, but also never had more than a handful of carries in a season. I would think that David Wilson's going to get another chance, maybe as soon as this week. He's on very thin ice. He cannot fumble. But Tiki Barber used to have a bad fumbling problem, and Tom Coughlin sure cured that. Tiki Barber's a Hall of Fame type running back, and David Wilson's good enough to be the same. But obviously, that's just something that has to improve, and we'll see. But I would not panic on David Wilson. I would hold on to him. I would even trade for him at this point. And there is a chance he gets buried, but I don't think so. I think the Giants know that he's going to be a big factor if he can hold on to the ball.
What would you offer What would you offer in an attempt to get Wilson?
I would trade Stephen Ridley probably for him.
It's so funny. That's the name I came up with too. But
maybe that's a lot. I mean, if I'm a Wilson owner, I'm panicking. I take Ridley. I mean, Ridley has his own warts, but that's still pretty good, right?
Yeah. I mean, who else was good out there? I mean, among the people that were, you draft later, there weren't that many good running backs.
Peterson was good on one play, and then he had that receiving touchdown.
Yeah, I'm just
talking about guys that were you got well after Wilson. See, you're trying to profit it all.
Right.
Who was better?
Not too many guys. I mean, Vereen was better, but now he's hurt. So, I mean, one of the guys that was good is now taken off the map for a few weeks.
DeMarco Murray?
Reggie Bush. Well, Reggie Bush was about the same point.
McFadden?
DeMarco Murray. Would you offer DeMarco Murray for...
No, I like DeMarco Murray. I think DeMarco Murray is going to be a monster if he's healthy for once. McFadden, I think, is... Would I trade McFadden right now for David Wilson? That's actually a good, interesting one.
How about Eddie Lacy?
I would not trade Eddie Lacy. I think I just watching Eddie Lacy in that game, I think Eddie Lacy is going to be good.
Yeah, I think a lot of people came to the same conclusion. That's why I threw his name out. I will trade for Eli right now. I think they're going to be throwing it all season long. I think their defense is going to have a lot of problems. If Amukamara misses against the Broncos, you don't think Peyton's going to find a way to exploit that? And you know that Eli's just going to have to throw and throw and throw and throw. I think it's just going to – and I love the receivers. Nix looks great. Victor Cruz obviously looked great. And Randall looked good. Randall looked really good.
The receivers are good. Eli's going to have a monster year. The defense, though, is interesting. The defense played well yesterday. I mean, they gave up 19 points on offense, and even some of those were set up by turnovers. And I mean, I think that the Giants C might be okay this year. You never know year to year. Terrell Thomas played really well. I wonder how long he'll hold up. But but I do think that the running back disaster plus the injuries in the secondary is like the hugest recipe for quarterback success.
Yeah, and it just two key stats here for how well the Giants play compared to Dallas. Dallas had 37 minutes of possession. Giants only 22. All right, that's a big gap, and you don't normally see that big of a gap, especially in a division game like this, where one team usually doesn't dominate the ball. Secondly, 14 points from defense and special teams from Dallas. I mean, you can't take away those 14 points. That's what 22 points that they get.
But also, they got an interception on the first play on the Giants' 20-yard line. They ended up just kicking a field goal.
Yeah.
So that's also on the defense. I mean, there were two of those things. So I think there's 6 points due to that, and 14. So you're already at 20. So now the Giants' offense gave up, 16 points, and I even think some of those were set up by turnovers.
Yeah. I mean, the comment that I had during the game was both of these teams look extraordinarily 8-8. They're very up and down. With the Giants, when they look great, they look great. When they look bad, they look terrible. And Dallas got very fortunate, and they won.
See, I'm actually remotely optimistic about both the Giants and my Bengals. I thought both looked good enough in spurts that I could see, hey, road opponent, reasonably tough opponent, and they controlled the flow of the play for the most part. I think there's reasons to be pretty optimistic about the Giants. I mean, I know the defense is still a concern, but like I said, I mean, the pass rush was good. Murray didn't break off any huge runs. He was efficient the entire game, but he didn't kill it on them.
They shut down Dez Bryant.
Yep.
They shut down Tony Romo, 5.4 yards per attempt. Yep. Tony Romo last year, I think I saw a stat that he had something like 2,800 yards in home games last year. I mean, they shut Dallas down. And part of that is that, the total yards obviously got negatively affected because when your team gets a pick six, the other team's quarterback gets right back on the field. Yeah. But you saw the time of possession difference, so Dallas had the ball. And also, the per-play efficiency was terrible for Dallas, 5.4 yards per passing attempt. They did a good job on defense. I don't know if the defense will hold up, but I do feel like I agree with Jeff. I think both the Bengals and Giants, it's obviously bad to start at 0-1, but the teams look good, and you just can't turn the ball over 6 times.
You certainly can't. And just one last thought to wrap up this individual matchup, but the Giants, even though they were extraordinarily unfortunate, they played really well. I still think they win that division, but I mean, if obviously you're not going to turn the ball over 6 times, but there are obviously issues there as far at the running back position especially. But it just seemed like Eli was a little off on some passes. He had three receivers that went over 100 yards, but he looked off. And then additionally, Romo, after he took the double shot to the ribs, he did not look the same after that. He was flinching away from hits, and he wasn't driving that ball downfield at all. I can't be as optimistic about the Giants as most. I feel like the max they can get to is 10 wins, and in that division, I think that would take it.
It's actually 15 is the max they can get.
Yeah,
15 is actually the max they can get to.
Yes. Mathematically,
so you know.
Yes, I know. All Giants fans say that they're going to win every game.
I don't think they're going to, but I'm just saying
yeah.
As a matter of fact that 15.
Yes. But hey, a couple of my buddies were saying, the Giants will win every single game they don't turn the ball over 6 times.
They would have won with 5 turnovers. I'm pretty sure they would have won with 5 turnovers. And had they gotten that onside kick, which they almost got, I guarantee they would have converted the Hail Mary. Dallas is such a folding, weak-ass team that if they had gotten that onside kick, that Hail Mary's going down. I guarantee it. We'll never know. Okay.
Maybe next time they play. But just before we wrap the whole show up, I just want one bold prediction from each Monday night game. Texans, Chargers, take it away. One bold prediction.
Riley Cooper scores a touchdown in the Eagles game. Texans, Chargers. He doesn't score in the Texans, Chargers game, but in the Texans, Chargers game, I'm going to say Antonio Gates scores twice.
I'm surprised the Chargers score twice.
I'm gonna start with the Houston San Diego game and say that someone so hates Chris Berman's broadcast of it that they sabotage the entire feed of it, and there's a 34-minute blackout again just to continue the delay thing. Now, Ryan Matthews is good. He's going to surprise people even against this Texans defense. He's going to score 1 touchdown and have 90 combined yards. In the Eagles-Redskins game, I think Pierre Garçon goes crazy. I think he has 150 receiving yards.
And I'll take it away. I'll start with that Eagles game. Staying on the Eagles, I think Bryce Brown has equally as good of a game as LaShawn McCoy because I feel that both running backs are going to be used equally or as effectively. And then in the Texans-Chargers game, I think that both Arian Foster and Ben Tate score at least once. I don't see the Chargers stopping anybody at any point this season. So it hurts to say it, but that's the way that I feel about it. Any final thoughts from you guys before we head into week two, Monday night games and then into week 2?
Nope.
All right, then. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been RotoWire's Fantasy Football Central / RotoWire TV. If you like what we're saying or if you want to subscribe to the RotoWire page, we have free trials going on right now. It's http://rotowire.com/GPLUS. That's rotowire.com/G+. Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you next week.